and proud to welcome to Talk of the Town State Senator Buck Newton. Senator Newton, welcome to Talk of the Town.
Oh, thanks for having me, Doug. Good morning, everybody.
And if you could, before the topic we want to talk about is the Electricities deal, and because you were really the driving force behind that, we want to get some of the background on it. But if you could take just 1 minute to give us an update on the budget, where
Sure.
it stands, and what your thoughts are going forward with the process as far as what possibly might happen in the House and with the governor on this.
Wow, thank you, Doug. Yeah, I think we're here at the very end. I think we've got the budget, the big points all completely worked out. We probably should have everything voted, hopefully by the end of the week, by Friday. I think most people are pretty pleased with it overall. I mean, we're giving a significant pay raise to teachers. I believe it's the largest pay raise in history in terms of real dollars. Average about a 7% pay raise for teachers. Put in a smarter pay scale for them too, so that their compensation will increase faster over time, so we can get closer to what would be reasonable for teachers. They've been lacking for a long time, and giving some more flexibility to the schools. We're going to shrink some class size as well. Overall, though, I think it's a pretty smart budget. Overall, it spends less than 3% increase, which is keeping it in check with inflation and population growth. So we're no increases in taxes, and we continue tax reform. So it's been a lot of work, but I think the governor's expressed a few minor problems, but in the end, I think he'll come along and we'll get out of here.
Well, you mentioned getting out of here. How frustrating is it in the so-called short session that we're staring August in the eye here, and you're still in session?
It's pretty frustrating. I don't think I'm alone with that. It's sort of like one of those long car trips. When you leave, you're all excited, and the trip's going pretty well. And then if you get bogged down in traffic for a while, that last hour of the trip, everybody's going, "When are we going to get there? When are we going to get there?" And that's kind of how I describe it. Everybody's ready to arrive.
Well, appreciate that update, and let's shift gears now to kind of the topic at hand. I know Henry did a great job on Tuesday when the deal was finally announced, talking about this, and actually talked with the head of the Greenville Utilities here about it. But wanted to get your perspective because in the Senate, you were the driving force behind this new deal, the Duke Electricities type of thing. First of all, talk about why it was so important to you, especially in your district, and what went into the initial process of trying to get this deal done. Because there was a lot of people just flat out that said there's just not a lot we can do on this. It's got to run its course.
I heard a lot of that, especially when we started working on it. I was elected in 2010, and I'm from Wilson, and my district's Wilson, Nash, and Johnston counties. And like a lot of eastern North Carolina, most of the major towns are Electricities, municipal power towns. The Eastern Power Agency, the acronym for that's called NECIMPA, and there's a huge debt that NECIMPA Electricities towns have for their ownership of these power plants. We own parts of three nuclear power plants, Sharon Harrison, Raleigh, and two down in Wilmington called Brunswick, and a couple coal plants. We owe billions of dollars on that. And so our power bills, in short, for those who live in those areas know, often average 35% higher than other parts of the state, like that Duke Power or Duke Progress areas. So instead of a $100 power bill, you're talking about a $400 power bill for your house. And this affects small business. This affects business job recruitment, major plants. Makes them not want to locate there or makes them consider leaving. Lost a lot of industry that way. So this deal translated, if we can get it completed, should mean a substantial cost savings for ratepayers, which will really economies in Eastern North Carolina. It really can be a major game changer for the economy over the next 10 years if we can get this finished.
Okay, and talk about, and first of all, whoever's calling Senator Newton, stop it. We're on the radio, dang it, and he's busy, so stop calling him and beeping in like that. You're starting to aggravate me.
Well, I'm on the road, so if it drops in the
Well,
middle,
I
I'll
know
call
you're.
back in.
We appreciate your time, and we know how busy you are. But I mean, I know that all of Eastern North Carolina is listening to this interview right now, and they should respect the fact that you're on the phone and not call you. You mentioned all the cities that are on it. I mean, we're talking about, of course, everybody who's on it, and that's not a lie. Thankfully, I'm not on it, but I have heard people say, that I lived in Wilson for a while, and I've heard people say,
Right.
gosh, what my power bill is in Wilson, and I go,
Sure.
oh my gosh. I mean, what, that's just incredible. What you're, it's like another mortgage payment in some cases if you got a good sized house. What is it going to be an across the board thing? Because I know there's some places that are worse than
No.
others. Are the savings going to kind of be relative to what the rates are now? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I certainly. And I'll try not to get too drilled into the weeds. But there's 32 cities in this agency, and each town or city owes a certain amount of the overall debt. And so, a town like, say, Rocky Mount or Wilson or Greenville, for example, they have very significant portions of the overall debt. And so, those towns will probably see a little bit more savings in the end for ratepayers than some of the smaller towns that didn't have as much debt. And
which makes
really
sense because they're putting in more. Yeah, it makes sense.
That's right. And it's like today, if you compare the rates of, say, the electric rates for a house in, say, Apex, which is also one of the towns, versus, say, Rocky Mount or Wilson or some of the others, there would be the Apex would look a little bit more competitive to Progress Duke than, say, Wilson or Rocky Mount would.
Right.
So obviously, when the deal is done, there won't be as much movement for the Apex rates as there will be for some of these other towns.
Right.
But and we're a long ways away from knowing for sure. There'll be a lot of things that have to be measured. But hypothetically, if you're used to, and I'm not kidding when I tell people, a lot of people are averaging a $400 a month power bill, and in the winter or the middle of the summer, it might be $600, $700, $800.
Yeah, I've heard people in Wilson told me they had $800 electric bill.
New houses, people keeping their thermostats on, in the wintertime on 65 and 63. I mean, I've kept my thermostat on 63 in the middle of the winter and still had a $500 power bill. And you imagine the businesses that affected by that, whether it's a small business, even an office. That's coming right off the top as far as costs. If people can get a 20 or 30 or 50 or maybe $100 a month break on their power bills, that's significant, and especially for plants,
right,
or manufacturing and so forth. So but it'll vary quite a bit. Nobody should say, "Oh, I'm going to get X amount of dollars off my bill." We've got a little ways to go on that, but it really should change the environment quite a bit.
We're talking with Senator Buck Newton, District 11 state senator, who was the key senator in pushing forward this legislation that made the deal. And as I said, this is a deal that a lot of people, I know from the local level, dealing with some local candidates, that people were saying, what can you do about this electric situation? They said, there's nothing that we can do. We're just going to have to let it run its course and pay the debt. And then after the debt's paid, we can do something. So, kudos to you and the other legislators that really fought through this and found a way to do it.
That's the key. I mean, there's still a lot of steps left, but, for people to understand these power plants that we own part of, we're selling it to Duke, and we're using the money to pay down this debt, and that's essentially what it is. It's like a car payment that we can't afford, to put it real simply. And we're driving the Mercedes, and we can't afford that payment. We're selling the Mercedes, and we're gonna get a good used Malibu or something, and something we can afford, and that's essentially what it boils down to. But this is the only way that we could find to move this forward, Anything else would be kind of a bailout, and that's not the right thing to do. These towns made this deal, and we've been paying for it, but we need to find a way to get out of that. And most people never thought that Duke would agree to buy, and but it's really exciting to me because I can see over the horizon what it's going to mean for all of eastern North Carolina.
Senator Newton, we've got a few minutes left. If you could, there's also some legislation in place because in the past, individual towns have kind of raided, for lack of a better term, some of this fund. Can you talk about the legislation that makes sure that as they do see savings coming back to them, that local politicians aren't going to dip their hands to that and use it for other projects?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Representative Collins, Jeff Collins over in Rocky Mount, and I have been pushing hard for this since we were elected in 2010. And part of that process, we had a study committee. And that study committee is where we really figured out that this is what needed to happen about selling these assets. But at that time, we wanted to do something hoping that we would get to this day where we can sell those assets and pay down the debt. So what we did is we passed a bill that capped the amount of money that each town could take from its electric fund. In the past, the towns, a lot of times, as you said, would kind of rate it or kind of nothing. They would rate it, and they would use it for whatever projects they wanted to do around town, and politicians like to do that. And so we're talking about your city council, your town council, the ones that can set the rate in each town. And so we passed this bill which put a limit on how much could be taken out of that, and it's really a very small amount that essentially pays the city back for whatever services they provide the electric fund. So that way, when we anticipated when we sold these assets, that they can't do anything with the money except fix the poles or fix the power lines or the substation. Otherwise, they just need to cut the rates when they get these savings, and that was one of the ways we saw to ensure that the ratepayers got a cut when we were able to get this done.
Finally, let me finish by asking you, because I do want to prevent premature exuberation and dancing in the streets. There's no rule, though, that 100% of the savings that each of these towns that are going to experience this, hopefully in the near future, are going to go directly back to the individual payer, because there may be infrastructure needs and things of that nature that the local. Can you talk a little bit about that, because we don't want anybody to think that they're going to just 100% of it's going right back to them.
That's right. We need to make sure people are understand clearly what will happen, and they need to hold their local city councils and town councils responsible for this, because they're the ones that set the retail rates. They're the ones that determine what the rate is in your town, and so they will be able to keep some of it because they got to keep the infrastructure up. They got to have the truck able to run out there and fix the line when the hurricane comes and blows the line down. That's going to be part of the process. I'm sorry. Apologize. I'm having to drive for a moment.
It's all right. You're allowed.
That's all right. You get my train of thought back. So yes, there won't be 100% of the savings, and it will vary by town because of the needs of the town and also some of the choices of their local politicians. So people need to look at this carefully when this is done, and hold their city councilmen or whomever accountable, and make sure that they are passing along the savings as much as they can to the ratepayers. And that's local control. So,
right.
That's a good thing. But people do need to be aware. Don't call me in 5 years
right.
if there hadn't been a savings in your town.
Senator Newton, we're up against the break. Thanks so much for your time, and best of luck as you finish out the session. Senator Buck Newton on electricities. We come back hour number 2 with more of Talk of the Town right here on WTIB.